I think we should start with general introductions. So it would be great if you ladies could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your life journey, and also say which musical instruments you play. And where shall we start? Maria, how about we start with you?
Sure. First of all, I would like to thank you for the great talks. Thanks a lot for inviting me. It's a great meetup so far. I'm so excited to be here. So my name is Maria Giarantini. I come from Greece. I live in Stockholm the last 10 years. I work as a senior data scientist at Embark Studios. Embark Studios is a Stockholm-based game studio, which essentially our mission is to allow everybody to become a game creator. And we are trying to challenge the traditional ways how the games are made by using cutting edge technology, we are trying to infuse machine learning in the game creation. Before Embark, I worked as an advanced data analyst at DICE Electronic Arts for 7 years. There I supported the analytic efforts on many games like the Battlefield series, Battlefront, Mirror's Edge, etc. My master degree is in machine learning. I finished at KTH, and my bachelor degree is within computer science in Athens. My current focus is within game balancing. Actually, I'm very passionate about this. And essentially, I'm trying to help the game designers, the game creators to check if the game works as intended. And for musical instruments, I really love playing the clarinet and the cello in my spare time. So that's me.
Sounds great. Anna, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, sure. So I agree with Maria. Thank you so much for the great presentations today, and I really appreciate being here. I always enjoy all the presentations you have here at WiDS, and I'm looking forward to today. So my name is Anna, and I currently work as the head of data science at ICA, which is a Swedish retail company. So if all of you listening today are in ICA, I don't think that you can help but see an ICA, in Sweden. I don't think that you can help but see an ICA shop somewhere in the city where you are living or visiting. So we are very big in retail, and I've been working there for 1.5 years. And before that, I worked as a data scientist in the financial field. I, however, do not have computer science as my background. I studied theoretical physics, so ask me about quantum computers. And when I don't work, I enjoy playing classical music or jazz on the flute or on the piano. Yeah, very short about me. Back to you, Galina.
And now we are down to Lillian. And as a note, I would like to say that we have a nice geographic distribution this time, because I'm guessing that me and Maria are up here in Stockholm, right? And Anna is down south. And Lillian is actually on another continent.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm actually in the Boston area. If any of you have been around here, I live really close to the Tufts University. Yeah, I feel really honored to be included in the Swedish meetup for WiDS. So I've been working with the WiDS team, particularly in their outreach program for education. So mostly targeting kids of all genders that are around what in the US is considered middle school, which is around ages 10 to 13, 14, with the idea that introducing them to different ways of using data, different fun things that they could be doing, would spark some interest for them to explore and sort of imagine themselves in that potential path in life. Really highlighting that there's lots of fun data jobs and lots of different ways that you could be using data, even if your title isn't data scientist. So I love the WiDS mission and hold it really close to me, and feel really honored to be here today. So thank you. And the presentations, I will just echo, that was so great. And Fatima gave me a lot to think about in terms of that mix of user research into data science as well. So it's been really great. Thanks for having me. So as I was able to say earlier in the introduction to how we do data science at Spotify, data science has lots of different flavors, whether it's machine learning research, machine learning engineering, data science in terms of product in particular, which is the area that I'm most passionate about, or just long-term research using sort of ML and other AI things as tools toward research. So there are many, many different flavors that I hope that we can talk about, but I am extra passionate about the flavor of product. My background is, I have an undergrad in math, where I loved things like algebraic geometry, number theory, and also did a lot of logic, similar to Fatima earlier. And a master's degree in applied math with a focus in machine learning. And the reason for that is I did that before there were data science programs, as there are many now in the US. And I just really loved the area of using ML toward analytics and ML toward understanding. And that was something that was sparked in me through an early marketing analyst job. Went back to school, got my master's. And really in the Boston area, there's a lively startup culture, and was able to learn lots of things over the course of about 10 years working in startups. And about 5 years ago, I joined Spotify, which is the total opposite. I know that we like to say that we are a startup at heart, but it is very different when you have thousands of employees versus 10.
5 years ago, it was more of a startup than it is now. So
yeah, but there were still a few thousand employees at that point. So but yes, definitely. And yeah, so I've had the title of data scientist, and am now at Spotify, and am now the insights manager of a product research team, product insights team. So I manage qualitative user researchers, business analysts, and product data scientists. We very heavily rely on the work that Caroline does and was sharing earlier. And my love of music is lifelong, but I actually haven't been playing instruments until very recently. I did when I was younger, took a long break in adulthood. And during COVID times, I started taking violin lessons. My husband got me a violin for Christmas, and I started taking violin lessons over Zoom, and finally got to meet my violin teacher a few weeks ago. And it's just been really lovely to have that output and that way of enjoying music in a very different way than just consuming it, but really trying to understand it. It's been really great.
I think this is, I think, an unusual group, because usually when I talk to data scientists, there's always somebody with some social sciences background and, some, okay, granted, we have some physics background over here, right? But biology, chemistry, some other stuff. My background is in mathematics and computer science also. And we started a bit of I think Lillian already started a bit of the discussion about what it means. What is data science for product a bit more specifically, and what type of data science is done in your product maybe more specifically? So yeah, maybe you can we can discuss a little bit more what type of product you all are working with, because as I said, this is a pretty diverse set of things. So if it's okay, we can start with you, Maria, again. And there was a presentation also before, so maybe you could tell us a little bit more about, product and what data science stuff you do with it.
Exactly. So the thing with the game industry is that we have two different phases with the game development. We have the phase before the release, and I define release when we give the game to the external users, to the external players, and after the release. And I think there is this misconception that you cannot do data science and data analytics during this pre-release phase, but especially at Tembark, we very heavily depend on data during the development. And essentially, we all have like a secondary role on playtesting our games. And we use this data in order to give feedback to the game creators about how the game performs. Are the game physics all right? The geometry works all right? How is the progression system works? Like what feature works as intended or not. And this is like the pre-release phase. And then we have a totally different product after the release, which is like very machine learning heavy. I would say it's like more data sciencey stuff after the release, where we have the real players, we have a lot of data, and then we do all this user behavior analysis, we do the recommendation systems, we do the prediction models like churn and stuff like this. So essentially in the game industry, we have two different products, which is defined based on in what phase the game is.
Apologies. At some point, you're bound to forget to unmute yourself in one of these. So what about the field of retail? What type of things do you guys do on? And I guess you're heading up the data science over there, so you have some good examples for us, right?
Yeah, there are a couple of very good examples. I mean, you have all the classical models, for instance, recommendation engines. So we want to recommend certain products to our customers, and this is very common in marketing. You know, we send out offers, so personalized offers to all the customers. For instance, if you are buying, if you're vegetarian, you wouldn't be very happy if you get some offers for meat. And then we have fraud detection, of course. So in the newly built stores in the northern Sweden, they will actually not have that many people working in them. So, you know, how can we find fraudulent behavior in different ways, and what actually makes up this kind of fraudulent behavior? And then we have certain products that are maybe not very common at ICA, at least not until recently, since ICA actually started invest more in this area quite recently. But then we're looking into things such as waste. I mean, ICA is a very, very big company in Sweden, at least. So the total amount of waste, if we calculate the amount of money it amounts up to, is you know, around, it's between 500 million Swedish crowns and 1 billion Swedish crowns. I mean, it's enormous. And also, actually, to start thinking about all the food that we throw away unnecessary makes you quite sad. So what we are trying to look into is that, is it possible then to check this in a data-driven way, to then, you know, warn that, you know, now it's time to turn the apples around, or, you know, in this shop due to the latest trend. So
it's like preventive maintenance.
Yeah,
but for food.
Exactly.
And instead of in manufacturing, they talk a lot about, you know, AI for preventive maintenance. But
exactly.
That's interesting.
So this is a really interesting product that we are building. And then also, you know, from the health perspective, since ICA has a lot of data, since, you know, half of the population in Sweden is then using ICA. We are working together with universities in order to check, now due to Corona, we can actually isolate certain illnesses and then try to see if there are statistically plausible, you know, relations between the food that you're eating and certain kind of illnesses. So we are very interested in doing these things as well, you know, because we have the data and we want to do something good, both for the customers and the shop, of course. Exactly.
Public health type things. That's interesting. We're not going to dig into it, but later I'm going to ask you whether that's possible to do without, you know, tracing what the food consumption, like say Lifesum does or something else. Lillian, we talked a little bit already about what Spotify, or we talk a fair bit, I guess you could say, about what Spotify does in terms of data science and product. But maybe you can speak specifically. Maybe there's something you would like to mention. I don't know.
Yeah, for me, I will say that the big thing that I have found is important on the product side versus data science for research or for engineering in terms of putting, production code. Data science on the product side for me is like hugely about collaboration. And so, as I mentioned, I have a few different disciplines in my team, and those disciplines collaborate heavily with each other, but they also collaborate with product managers, different types of engineers, researchers, design. And it's really a forcing function for things like very good storytelling and communication and reframing questions together. So I think you can kind of hear the variety of ways in which you can apply data science to different product questions just from how Maria and Anna are speaking about their work. And I find that variety is huge in my team as well, and in Spotify widely. So I think that's sort of one of the things that distinguishes product data science for me and that makes it really exciting. It's just the variety and the opportunity to work with lots of different people and learn about different disciplines, but also really represent data science and not just the methods, but the outcomes in how decisions are being made throughout product.
I think it's very interesting because the stories that you three told, I think, represent this variety. So on one hand, we have a fair bit of exploratory data analysis and kind of decision support. It's a type of stuff that I guess Maria talked about, that games developers happen in games development before the game is launched, right? There's a fair bit of it happening in ICA with, there's a lot of decision making that is going on here, right? And then we talked about experimentation, which is kind of like post the game launch, or when you're running a retail website, or when you're running a consumer media thing like Spotify does. Experimentation is kind of like this constant thing. And then we I think also mentioned where more machine learning products, where machine learning is part of the product. So a traditional example for many years now has been recommendations, right? So you recommend something, you predict something, or you recommend something, you're trying to do something with this type of behavior. Did I forget anything? Is there any other aspect that we can highlight? So kind of like exploratory data analysis, like things, decision support, experimentation, and kind of like machine learning in, within the products, or machine learning features within the products.
I think that there are a lot of different things that we can highlight. And when we talked before this meeting, I also or you could all hear that I have a tendency to become very enthusiastic, talk a lot. So I'll try to tune that down, to make this a group discussion. But one thing that I thought of that I would like to mention about, when it comes to recommendation engines, is that we have a bit of a problem with one of the models that we are building within this area at ICA. So for instance, a typical thing that retail companies want to do is, of course, to increase the spend of the customers. Yes, I'm open with this, it's something that we want to do. So one way to do that is then to send out rewards to customers. Once again, if you live in Sweden and you are a customer at ICA, which I hope you are, of course, you might have received these small, coupons, or in the application, in the app, stating that now you have 25 or 50 Swedish crowns to go, and shop for at a shop at a store close by to you. And, the thought behind this then, that we want this kind of reward to increase the spend that, the customers want to do. But how do you measure that this is, the causality behind? I mean, this is the driving factor. And that you wouldn't just go to the shop anyways, and you just then happen to have 25 more Swedish crowns than usually. Now this is actually a very interesting problem.
And I think it's interesting because I think causality type issues has been, Sahar can probably talk more about it, but it's been a very fruitful area of research, very important area of research in data science and machine learning for the last 2 or 3 years. For many of these reasons. But I've seen it really more, again, in predictive maintenance rather than in anything else. So we talked a little bit about the data science and product, and I think when we had a discussion, it was very clear that there's something interesting when happening with data scientists in product. And like what's different? Like what is it like to be a data scientist working on this kind of issues? I think Lillian talked a little bit about it already in terms of it does require a lot of collaboration, which is pretty end to end. But you know, is there, you know, can you tell me a little bit more about your experiences and maybe about your best practices also? Maria?
Sure. So I would like to share something. As a data scientist, one big part of our job is like to communicate our results. It's like the whole storytelling thingy, and also the collaboration with other data scientists and stakeholders and stuff. But sometimes our role is like the educator. First of all, we need like to teach the other people how to interpret our data. So when we have like a dashboard and stuff, they know what they are looking for, and they don't see like just some bar plots and that's it. So I guess we all have been in situations, in stand-ups, in meetings, in virtual meetings now in the COVID era, and sometimes we cannot really focus on all the numbers we hear. And from this, and from the need that you need to be this storyteller, I got inspired a bit by all these YouTube videos. I guess we all have checked the YouTube video from working out till how you can fix your washing machine. So I thought we can incorporate this flavor to data analytics and data science, and we can do it like a do-it-yourself data analysis, data science thing. And this is actually something that I started working on during my DICE time, and I use the same philosophy at Embark, especially now in the COVID area. We have some weekly vlogs. We are making videos about an analysis or something interesting, or how I'm working through through a dashboard or a report. And these videos are not like very long. They're just like 2-3 minutes, but they deliver the message directly. And the game team, the game creators, or whatever stakeholder, they can see it at their leisure. They can focus on this because they are very short. So essentially you give them the message without them like feeling the stress that they need to be super focused to understand the numbers. So
and read yet another email, man.
Report,
oh my God,
yes.
take me out of that one, huh?
Week over week.
I would say that so last year I've learned to use iMovie finally to cut movies. And I learned it in order to do actually the first one-on-one video interviews with data scientists for WiDS. Now Katie actually does them. And it was a great experience, and it made me realize this is really easy to do. So if to the audience, I can say, get inspired, record something, record yourself talking to your computer for 2 minutes, and then see if you can cut the little videos. You will be surprised how you suddenly have a new communication tool in your in your arsenal. It's kind of interesting. So what it's like to serve results in the remote era and work remotely. And Lillian, I think you have a lot of experience also because you work from Boston, and of course Spotify has headquarters in Stockholm. What is it like to be a data scientist and having to deal with all of this communication overhead?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that is different working at an international company is that there are you just have to take more into consideration when you're communicating, because there are time zone differences. There are personality differences always, right? But you add to it some cultural differences as well. And you really need to be very thoughtful and intentional about making the work accessible. And as Maria is saying, like not overloading your audience, not throwing too much at them in terms of the methods, which is actually the part that we love as data scientists. We love to show off the new code, the new methods, the new visualization we were able to do. And it's hard because our stakeholders have a hard time digesting that, and they need some help to get there.
Less is more, but we're all terribly pedantic people, right? Like everything.
That's why we're so good at our jobs. We're detail oriented, right? We like to get in the weeds. Yeah. We like to get in the zone. So
kind of it's interesting stuff. So I think it would be, how about we pick a few questions from the Q&A? So one question that we have is, how do you best communicate the quality or limits of data and analysis, especially when what you have isn't enough to make the decisions product teams need to make? Yeah, how can we interpret this? Yeah, it's interesting. Would one of you like to comment on this?
Well, actually, within the game, sometimes you need more time, I would say, to verify that what you're seeing is valid. So I would say we'll just revisit this analysis to be sure that the same trend.
You sometimes
remains.
have situations where you just didn't run analysis for long enough, so you don't have sufficient significance.
Exactly.
How often does this happen for you, Anna?
Well, I was just thinking about it. I mean, so as I said, we have a lot of data, but the data isn't always good enough to actually build a model on. Or, you know, sometimes you realize that you can't, it doesn't matter for how long you let something run. I mean, you just won't get any results that you can use. And also, if you can't explain the results to the, you know, business operations that will use it, then it's no real value in it, is it? So sometimes, or, you know, pretty often it turns out that no, you still have to go with a rule-based model, or, you know, maybe a rule-based system.
Because people need to understand what is going on for them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's, you know, part of both part of, you know, the personal integrity that, you know, you want to build something that someone can use, but also part of the responsible AI that, you know, you have to have transparency and understanding for what's happening.
And I think it's interesting, especially the fraud detection issues and similar kind of require this. Whereas some other, I guess maybe there's some other problems which are, you know, you can do some other stuff. But it's interesting because we used to, when I was at Google, at least, when we talked about experiments, we used to say, well, you know, we throw out quite a few of them, like 60% of them or 70% of them don't work out. And I think that's something people don't talk enough. There is always this unspoken expectation that we'll run this experiment and we'll get some great numbers, and this thing is going to be amazing, right? And then we'll put them on the slides and management will look at them and the launch will be approved. And it's like, no, like 70% of this is out the window. And it might be helpful to talk more about this. We are supposed to have, that's how it works with this type of data, right? We need to make sure it works, and we need to also make sure people are not penalized when they work on something or develop something and, you know, it didn't work out next, right? Like learn something out of it, move on. So there's one question for you, I think, Anna, again. In which type of product projects are data scientists involved in ICA? And I think you answered some of them, but maybe is there anything you would like to add to it?
Well, so there are, of course, a lot of segmentation going on, you know, that you have the product data and you want to understand the products in better ways to classify them so that, you know, you can create some kind of price elasticity segmentation. You want to understand the customers better. There's a lot of, you know, you can do forecasting prediction of, you know, of what do we believe will sell better next year, both on a product level, but then also, of course, on a store level. Will the toilet paper be as popular in 2022 as it was 1 year ago?
If it's not a business secret, will it be as popular?
No, but actually salad has gone up. It turns out that salad wasn't a big hit during 2020. So, I mean, you have all these, you know, optimizing baskets, you have the logistic problems, right? Because we have all these stores and we need to transport the goods from the warehouses to the stores. So all these like traditional machine learning problems are ongoing and they are really interesting. But I do like when we, you know, get the purpose filled use cases as well. So, you know, when we can connect them to the healthcare, or when we can connect it to these different things, so decrease the waste and so on.
Yeah, it's really interesting with this, and we should probably do a meetup on some of this stuff, because There are a lot more interesting examples now, I think, than there were a couple of years ago. So we could actually have an interesting conversation. Well, another conversation we had before, and I think that's really important for our audience, because the panel is actually usually a career panel, and we usually get a lot of career-related questions. So, but what roles would you say that a data scientist, not what roles, I'm sorry, what skills does data scientist working with product should have, and what kind of skills should they aim to acquire? Lillian, would you like to start?
Yeah, and I see that there's also a question sort of in general about business analysts, so I can try to answer a little bit about that as well.
That would be great, because Spotify is a big company that has all of the roles, so I think it would be great if you could address it.
What I was going to say is, in smaller companies, you can wear many hats. In bigger companies, you usually have to specialize a bit more. And so we do make a distinction between data science and business analysts. I've been both, and I've been both at the same time. So it's not an either or always. But I think in general, data scientists have to have inquisitiveness. They have to be, into curiosity. So I think some drive about asking further questions once they see things. So that's more of an inherent trait. But I think it could also be developed with more data intuition and sort of data exploration time, where you see some distributions and see some trends, and then kind of ask yourself questions out loud, write them down, try to follow through. So I think that's a skill set to practice. Galina, did you have something you wanted to say?
I would probably say, and I'm going to pretend to be the audience. I would say I think people tend to be really interested also more specifically what technical skills to develop.
Yeah, that's what I was going to, exactly. And I think from that, the technical skills that are core are being able to do data mining, so SQL or some other format of actually interacting with the data, and being able to do exploratory data analysis really gets you to those skills. And so that means you start with the question, but then you also develop the skills to be able to autonomously reach the data and go do your own analysis. So I think statistical understanding, probability and statistics, like the basics of that, are really important. And being able to use different types of coding to actually employ those things is really important. So for somebody who's thinking about what are the core things of data science, I think that's where it starts for me in terms of product. And then the more specialization type things could be around experimentation methods and tools. So you could play around with tools like Optimizely and some data sets that exist online to understand how to compare two different treatments, a control and a treatment group, and be able to understand not just the concepts of experimentation, but what are the types of things that you would do to actually apply those concepts. And so coding is essential here, but it's not in the software engineering ways. Coding towards statistical applications and exploration.
Those of you here who do Python at work, raise your hand.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so Python, so Jupyter notebooks.
Exactly, yeah. So it's not necessarily deployment of code.
And I would say visualization, learning how to use some visualization packages so you can make bang up amazingly done visualization pays off really, really well.
Exactly.
Specifically, sorry, a quick question, Lillian, before I move on from you.
Yeah.
So data scientists, business analysts.
Yeah.
Which skills go into which bucket?
Yeah, so definitely experimentation and meta-analysis and things of all of that nature. Data science, to me, that's where it falls, because those are about specific questions of a sort of a micro view of the product, and sometimes at the macro view of trends over different changes that you might make to the product. Business analyst is more about connecting the overhead business to whatever product area you're talking about. So whatever, it might be a collection of things, it might be a big team that you're working with. So I think we try to balance those two within my group. And it's really about being able to tie the decisions that you're making locally to the bigger picture of like what Spotify is trying to achieve as a business.
Mm-hmm. I see. Maria, how does it work in the gaming companies? What do you have in that sense in terms of roles, and what kind of skills do people have in what skills do data scientists need in a company like Embark?
So in a company like Hamburg, we are like a small company still. So essentially a data scientist like mostly focused on Python, SQL, and a little bit of data engineering. I don't set up like pipelines and stuff, but it's really good to go hand in hand with the data engineers and understand what they need to do so you can get telemetry data that you need. So I would say this, of course, visualization techniques, packages, and stuff like this are very important. I mean, the game team really needs like to have the visualization, and sometimes it's not like simple visualization like bar plots. We might need to make like heat maps and stuff on top of like the game map, so stuff like this. And we have like the data analysts, but they are mostly focused on business performance, like engagement, retention, acquisition metrics.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think that makes a lot of sense. So here's a good question to all. Which are the biggest challenges you're facing with experiments in your companies? Anna, do you want to start?
With
I'm not sure I put the word experiments out of, yeah,
no.
Yeah, but maybe we should.
This can be interpreted in multiple ways, I think, but we don't have that many problems with, experiments. I think that rather we try to make the data available for anyone at the company so that everyone can play around with it. Now, what we have, the problem is rather something that was touched upon earlier. So, the data engineering part and the collaboration there to make sure that when the experiments then, or when the prototypes, MVPs, or whatever you want to call it, bear fruit and you want to put them into production, how do you do that in a scalable way? And then you have to have a good collaboration with the IT department, or your data scientists have to have, some kind of freedom degrees within the systems and then, learn how to build a good pipeline. So yeah, that's one of our main problems.
Maria or Lillian, would you like to say something about, challenges with experimentation?
I think Caroline did a great job of talking about the current state of experimentation at Spotify. And I was here when our old system was here. So I'll just say that it is amazing to see this progress. And I think that's the main thing that has been really challenging, is that getting it right can take time, especially if you as a company decide to build some homegrown tools for it. So I think that's the hardest thing as a business, really, to communicate to the business, is that getting it right will take time.
Like projects, I think a lot of the times the marketing for something like Optimizely or Google stuff is really good. And then it's like, well, if you build it internally, yes, you need it. Like when you get to become a medium or large company, what we see is that people kind of need to build their own experimentation systems.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, it's not there's no sleek marketing that comes with it. It takes time, effort and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. Maria?
Yeah, I can cover a bit the experimentation part in games. Actually, it's a very challenging topic. More or less, you can do experimentation on UI elements, but in terms of gameplay, especially in multiplayer games, it's super hard to do experimentation. I mean, if you give like a new weapon to a group of players, this can backfire within the community, and you can get like a very bad sentiment from the players. So I would say that it's like a hot topic within the game industry.
Yeah, makes sense. So there is so to wrap, we don't have that much time, but it's interesting. There's a question that came up, which also relates to a question we had on the list that we wanted to discuss. And it's a little bit more about the roles in the organization, because data science and product is always kind of, it's like very important, but also a bit like a stepchild that gets, like a hot potato that gets tossed around sometimes. So the question was, are data scientists embedded within product organization and teams in your company, or are they more centrals, and what are the pros and cons on this? So yeah, it's an interesting question. Where do those roles report to, I think, is also an interesting question. And what is the structure of your organization? And you know, like thumbs up, thumbs down, like what have you learned, you know, good and bad things. Who would like to start? Maria smiling. Maria, you go first.
Okay, so I have worked in different scenarios. For instance, at EA, I was like in a central team. And then now at Embark, I'm part of the game team. And I really love being like close to the people that they make the actual product and get their feedback and their insights on how do they visualize what the end goal needs to be. So I would say this is like a huge prong. You can get direct feedback from them. When you are in a central team, it's like you are a bit more detached and you don't get this impact of your work right away. But of course, it has also its pros. I mean, you have maybe a manager that's like more related to analytics, so you can get direct feedback or you can progress in your career a bit faster. But in terms of like doing impact and feeling it right away, I would say I really prefer to be like parts of the people who make the product.
Interesting. Anna, what about how do you feel about it?
I tried to answer a question and I can't listen and write at the same time. So I missed the answer and was hoping that you would take me at last so that I, could
I can totally do it.
question.
Lillian, what what do you think about it?
I think I missed the question too. I was listening to Maria.
It's one of those, you know, like we say, you know, it's quite late over here, but Lillian.
Oh, the central, yes.
You, it's lunchtime. You're missing the
lunch.
Yeah,
it is.
We totally appreciate you being here.
Yeah, no, sorry. I do have an answer.
Where
sorry,
do
I was
the roles,
thinking about
where do the roles, the data scientist roles that work in product, are they close to the product? Are they in the central team? What are the pros and cons to it? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I was thinking about Maria's answer because I was thinking back on my roles as well. I've also had like a variety of roles closer to engineering, closer to product, closer to the business side. At Spotify, we have a product insights community. I report into a product insights director, but I work most closely with people of all different types of disciplines. So for us right now, we have a very like product focused group, but we learned over time that we actually were missing out on some of those horizontal things. And based on that trade-off, we decided to invest some, headcount and folks into a centralized team, which I spoke about a little bit earlier. And I'm not sure that there is a perfect answer, as Galina is mentioning. It really depends on what the goals are of why you're using data science to begin with and what you want to leverage.
What is your personal preference?
My personal preference is product. Like I want to work with engineers and product managers and designers to build a product. And we will use whatever methods we need to use to get there. I'm personally really driven to do that.
And yeah, any last words, Anna? And I think then we will probably need to wrap up. The time is coming.
No, I agree. I also think that it's really good to be close to the product and also to understand the the field that you are building the product in. And then I was thinking about so we are currently building a price elasticity segmentation, and it's really tricky to do that. I mean the naive way to do it is of course to cluster it based on all the customers, but then how do you change it when it comes new customers, and how do you explain the clusters and when the clusters change and so on? And then it turns out that no, we as we said earlier, if we want to create value in this, we have to go with a maybe a regression model or dimension reduction, whatever. But the features become very important, and you won't be able to understand the features if you don't understand how customers behave and what the driving factors are. And you won't be able to do that if you sit in a central team and never meet the market experts or So I totally agree with Lillian that we want to work in product teams.
Absolutely. Last question, just because we mentioned business analysts before. Would it make sense for business analysts to be more central and data scientists to be more local? Maybe something like this?
I don't know. I think it depends on the business analyst is also quite a broad title, isn't it? So at our company, they are working with a bit more, strategic and light analysis questions, and they won't be able to do that if they don't work closely to the market side. So.
It's so interesting to talk to you, and I have so many things I would like to ask. And I also was going to ask for any ridiculous stories, but unfortunately we're slightly over time, and I'm going to ask you about this during the mingle, because those are the best ones usually. So, but thank you so much, Maria and Anna and Lillian. I think it's been great talking to you, and it's super interesting for me because I used to work a lot with experimentation in my like 15 years ago or so. So it's just really, really fascinating to see all of this also.